Hey everyone, Arlisha here and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be hanging out in my sketchbook again, relaxing together hopefully, and exploring this art supply that I have had for a little while in a couple different forms, but have never really taken the opportunity to talk about here on the channel. So today we are going to be looking at water-soluble graphite. I have two different items here to show you from two different brands. These are just items that I think I may have purchased the Art Graph block, but the Lyra stick was sent to me by a fellow art friend. So thank you to them if you're watching. Thank you for sending me one of these. I've had them in my pencil case for a while now, really for a few years, and I use them every once in a while. So I thought it could be really fun to take a few minutes to talk to you about them. I think that water-soluble graphite is pretty self-explanatory in the way that it is graphite that is soluble in water. And the two that I have here are different in that one is much lighter and the other is much darker. Because it's graphite, you can find them in a variety of values or hardnesses, which is what you might expect from like a normal pencil drawing set, you know, where you can have all the way from 4H up to like 9B depending on the hardness, and that affects the value of the tone, and water-soluble graphite is the same. So the two I have here are very different in tone. The Art Graph is much lighter and the Lyra is much darker. The Lyra is 9B, the Art Graph doesn't say, but they are very different, which makes them a lot of fun to use together. To show you at least a little bit of how these supplies work, I'm testing on these swatches. First, I wanted to test how they erase, and erasing with these is a lot more like lifting watercolors than it is erasing a pencil, and it will still smudge once the layer is dry. So in that way, it's similar to graphite, but you can layer washes like you would with watercolor. So it definitely does share a lot of similarities between watercolors using a graphite pencil, and also a little bit like an ink wash in that the washes tend to dry a little bit flatter than something like watercolors would. For a couple of quick examples, I just have some sketches that I did in my sketchbook, and we're going to play around with throwing some values on them, which is something that I really like using water-soluble graphite for. I know that you could technically just use one watercolor color if you wanted to do thumbnail sketches or test out values, or you could use ink. But part of the reason why I really like water-soluble graphite is that I can just grab it and sit down with a brush, and as long as I have like a container of water and some kind of towel or rag to remove excess water, I'm pretty much good to go. For this example page in my sketchbook that I'm showing you today, I didn't even use a palette or anything like that. I just started with that lighter Art Graph brick to lay down like some base shadows, and that one is so light, and then I went over it with varying washes of the darker graphite, and it's a lot of fun because even once you lay it down, you can move the wash around, you can lighten it up, and I was able to layer in a way that was really satisfying. While I've been working on this video, I was trying to figure out who water-soluble graphite is for, you know, like who I think might be interested in purchasing this. And it's really just if you think the concept seems intriguing to you, maybe if you were doing like plein air value sketches and you didn't want to have a palette out for watercolors or some sort of dish for ink or something like that, you could just take one of these little bricks or the sticks, depending on what brand or what type you're using, and you could just use like a water brush or something like that, and it could be really fun for doing quick value sketches. I use it a lot for thumbnails, like I said, when I am preparing for paintings, as it's an easy way to more clearly see a composition just for its values before I start working on color. When I mentioned that I wanted to make a video where I just shared a bit about these art supplies with you guys over on Instagram, someone had asked about how it plays with watercolors and also how it compares to watercolors. So I wanted to show you at least a little bit of that here. It's kind of a strange combination, and I think that ultimately it's similar to like what you would consider about whether or not you want to paint over top of a heavy graphite sketch. You know, I have my sketches here, and I think I use like a 2B mechanical pencil. That's kind of my go-to pencil. But when I know I'm going to paint over top of it with watercolors, I usually try to use a very light hand, and then I will lighten my sketch before I start painting so that I don't smear graphite into my watercolor washes, because once those little specks of graphite get into, you know, cleaner watercolors, it's dirty in a way that is difficult to recover, or sometimes even just impossible to recover. And I think that ultimately this is pretty similar. For my first little sketch, I used water-soluble graphite for the head and then just did the background in Grams turquoise, which is a color that I forgot that I had, and I love it so much. I really want to use it more. It's such a brilliant, bright, and I really do feel like even on the video it doesn't really do it justice for like how vivid that turquoise is. I mean, I know we're not here to talk about that. We should talk about Gram watercolors though, because it's been a long time and I want to talk to you about them. Anyway, yeah, I think that technically you could combine these, like you could use them together, but I think again it would just be like making your watercolors a bit smudgier and a bit dirtier, and depending on the effect that you're going for, that could work. I prefer to, if I'm going to do like a mixed media sort of setup, keep them a little bit more separate, you know, and really just use each of the two varying mediums in the graphite and the watercolors, like just use them more independently and let them shine on their own, but it's still fun to use them next to each other and to see how they vary and how they differ. So if you're someone who enjoys pencil sketches and who really likes to work with a variety of tones with your pencils, and you maybe want to try something a little bit more flowy or organic or watercolor-like, I think this could be a lot of fun for you to play with. If you've used water-soluble graphite before, please do let me know what you think of it. I would love to know how other people are using it. I haven't done too much with it outside of using it as like a sketching tool, just for practices and things in my sketchbook. And even just for that, it's been so much fun, especially because the darker stick from Lyra is so satisfying to use in that really, really dark value. And then it dries down like graphite, so it has this sort of gritty texture to it, and I really like it. I tried towards the end as well, layering some watercolor over top of the graphite just to see what that would do, and I don't really know what to say about what it did. It looks like watercolor over top of graphite, so not really any huge surprises here as far as how these supplies work together, but overall still lots of fun, and it really does make something unique to be able to get that gritty graphite texture and still play with it like watercolor and use washes and see graphite bloom like watercolors. Is really fun and very interesting. So I would love to hear your thoughts on what I've made, or if you've used this type of material before, or if you're interested, you know, let me know. I'll leave links to what I can find or what I would recommend down in the comments. as always, a huge thank you to my members here on YouTube and my patrons over on Patreon. I'm so grateful for you guys, and if anyone is interested in exclusive weekly vlogs and real-time videos and digital downloads, you can check out either of those platforms if you would like to support me and this channel further. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me this week. I hope you are doing well, and I will talk to you next time. Bye bye.